Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. How are y'all doing? I'm going to talk to you today. As some of you may know, that I had a surprise retirement party that I threw for my husband. And he was surprised. He loved it. It was very, very successful. But there were a number of bumps and hiccups that happened along the way. And I'm so grateful to Jen Perry. Well, she's one of my definite go-to people, and she just was really helpful in helping me walk through some of these bumps that happened. And what I'm seeing is, as much as I feel like I'm really good about having hard conversations with my kids and in certain relationships, I just have area to grow. And so I have some very specific examples of some things that happened along the way in planning this that I want to talk to you about. And then also something came up at the party that has to do with relationships and outgrowing relationships, but not having communication about it. And if I have some time, I also want to talk about, we tend to be deep thinkers, deep processors, but we may have activities that we enjoy doing, and those may not be our people. But how do we figure out how to navigate those relationships so we can do the activities that we enjoy and show up without having to talk about things that may be deep and personal? Sometimes it's just generational. Sometimes people have been raised in a time where they don't talk about feelings and things that are deep. And I think I've said it too. I don't want to talk about shallow chit-chat stuff. But I had this opportunity to spend one-on-one time with someone. It wasn't intentional, but that's just how it turned out. And I know this person is of a different generation and is I joked with a friend, okay, these are the things that we don't talk about, and then these are the things that we can talk about. And the truth is, many of us have the ability to navigate situations without having to go deep, and we can have a beautiful connection. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that, although I've kind of said a lot about it. The first thing that I want to talk about is, in planning this surprise party for my husband, it was midweek because both of my boys are in college and they're usually working on the weekends. One of them came down on a Tuesday night. The party was on Wednesday. And Wednesday, Josh and my husband golfed and they were gone. And Daniel was supposed to be down at 10 in the morning. And we needed to go get the cake. We needed to buy some of the decorations. There were some things we needed to do. And he wasn't here in the morning. And instead of being direct with Daniel, I was complaining to Josh. I'm not advocating this behavior. And Josh texted Daniel and said something like, "Mom is getting really stressed." So I think about 10:20, Daniel called me and told me that he would be here at 1. Well, I had a client at 1 and that wasn't going to work. What this activated for me is that belief of, you can't count on anybody. I'll just do it all by myself. Forget it. I don't need you. And we had this text exchange and I was just like, don't worry about it. I'll just take care of it myself, blah, 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 blah. And he wanted to take a shower. He said he'd be here later. And I ended up just sobbing. There was a lot of stress and tension around the planning of this party. The night before, I had a meltdown that we bought chicken. We bought 6 packages of chicken. I thought there were enough thighs. We had 18 people coming and there ended up being 21 chicken thighs. We thought they were boneless. They ended up having the bones in them. I bought all these ingredients for this marinade that I wanted that had unusual things that I don't normally purchase, like lemongrass and Vietnamese fish sauce. I bought 2 knobs of ginger, all of these serrano chilies, and it turns out that the recipe that somebody shared with me was to make a spicy coleslaw in addition to the marinade. And they had told me that, but it just didn't sink in. So I'd multiplied the recipe by 5. Wasn't sure that the chicken would even fit into the Tupperware that I have for marinating. It turns out later on, you probably all know this, I didn't, you can marinate in a Ziploc bag. But I just had a total meltdown and I still have all this ginger and serrano chilies and rice vinegar and mirin that I don't even know what I'm going to do with. The nice thing is, since the ruse was that we were throwing a surprise party for one of the boys' friends, at least I could share some of my stress with my husband. And I just called him kind of in tears and like, I don't know what to do. And He's like, well, we'll just do some hamburgers and then we have to get buns and then we have to get ketchup and mustard and lettuce and tomatoes. It's like, it's okay. I'll take care of it. And then I think he called Daniel. I can't remember if I had told Daniel or not what had happened, but then my husband had to call Daniel and Daniel was like, it's fine. So that was meltdown number one. So this Wednesday morning, I just started sobbing. The pressure, the tension, everything that was going on was just too much. And crying for me is a great release. My MO is to cry on my own, manage it, and not tell anybody that I had a meltdown and to just be very stoic about it. I may have had some resentment against my son, and then it continues to feed this narrative of I can't count on anybody, nobody's here for me, which is not the truth. And he did say he'd be here and then he changed his mind. And so I thought I really need to talk to Daniel about what's going on. So I called him. I was still tearful. I was crying. And I said, it's not okay that you tell me that you're going to be here at 10 and then all of a sudden you tell me you're going to be here at 1. And he's like, well, I said I was going to be there between 10 and 11. I said, no, you said you were going to be here at 10. And then he owned it and he apologized. I was still very defensive and really trying to push him away. He asked what needs to be done. And I told him the things that needed to be done. And he said, well, I can do this and you can do that. But because he doesn't have a Costco membership, he wasn't able to do some of the things. And we worked it out. And to his credit, he was able to kind of push through my anger and resistance because I was still in that place of like, I don't need you. I'll take care of it. He decided he would take a shower when he got here. He drove down. It was really interesting when we hung up. I said to him, I couldn't have thrown this party without you. You've been very instrumental, but I was counting on you. He says, you're right. I'm sorry. When we hung up, I said, I love you. He never says this. He goes, I love you more. And then he called me on his way down and again apologized. And I told him, no need to apologize anymore. The fact that we could work through it. And I was very impressed with his ability to kind of push through my resistance of like, it's fine. I don't need you. You don't have to be here. I really appreciated that. And I think we often get so focused on the upset or the emotions. And what I was able to tell him is how much I appreciated his ability to stick with the process. He didn't get overwhelmed by my feelings. I was able to express what was going on, ask for what I needed, and we worked through it. And on this phone call, he's like, Mom, it's all going to work out. Dad's going to be surprised. Everything's going to be okay. I just really appreciated his ability to be grounded. Like my little boy is turning into this mature man, and I really appreciated it. That was one of the bumps that we worked through. That morning, my other son, Josh, and I had taken, he's got the dog Zeke. If you listen, you know about Zeke. Maisie loves Zeke. She's like a little sister. And as soon as he's around, she just can't get enough of him. And he will sleep in one of the rooms in the house. And Maisie will get up in the middle of the night and go to the door. And her tail is very thick and long, thump, thump, thump on the door because she just wants to play with Zeke. Very, very sweet. She also doesn't like going into the water at the beach, but if he goes in, she'll go in about up to her shoulders. And then she's like, I don't know about this. He goes in much deeper. But anyways, Josh and I had gone to the beach in the morning and we're talking about the party. And Josh and I are very similar in some ways, and in other ways, we're very different. And he just kept telling me, like, Mom, you're overthinking it. How should we have Dad come in? Because if he comes in the front door, because my son Daniel was going to have Steve go out with him to get some art supplies, and then everybody could come and we'd surprise them. But the way our house is, when you come in the front door, you can see through the kitchen and the kitchen window, which is on the patio, which is where we are. And so we needed to figure it out. And Josh was just, you're overthinking it. It'll be fine. Not in a dismissive way, but this is just how he kind of comes wired, where Daniel and I are very detail oriented. And it was interesting. At one point, I said to Josh, it's the equivalent of me saying to you, Josh, every morning you should get up, you should make your bed, you should iron your clothes, you should lay your things out, you should pack your lunch. That's just not how he's wired. And I didn't take offense to what he said, but I think often when we have kids, partners, parents that are wired differently than we are, from his perspective, I was making it complicated. And maybe in some ways I was, but also I didn't feel shame by that. I didn't get defensive. We're just different. And these details are important to me. And it was important to figure out how he was going to come in so he wouldn't see us and see the decorations. One of the other things that happened is, I still can't really talk about it, but we have some challenges with our neighbor who's, yard is like right next to the side of our yard where the party is going to be. We've had some pretty serious challenges with this neighbor. And our dogs bark. And when Zeke was here and Maisie was here, the neighbor comes home and he enters the door that is adjacent to our backyard. He comes in the side door instead of his front door. So the dogs bark. So I'm trying to be very attentive. And as soon as they start barking, I call them in. They came in. But he ended up having some pleasant words with my son. Not a lot, but a few. He likes my son. He says he's legit. I don't know what that means, but... So I felt like there was a little breadcrumb because we don't even engage with him anymore. The last few times that we've had encounters with him, either he slams his back door, he's cussing, he's yelling. It's not a relationship I engage in. I just kind of try and steer clear. So after the party, we had a ton of leftovers, a ton of cake. And I said to Josh, I would like for you to bring some leftover food and cake over to the neighbor and tell him my mom sent this over to you. And Josh says, I'm tired. And I just didn't want to push him. I didn't know that I could. And again, my word push is not even accurate. So we didn't do anything, but I just thought it would be a nice opportunity to extend a little bit of an olive branch. And I talked to Jen Perry about this the next day or that night. And she said, you have a right to say why it's important to you. And he has a right to not do anything. So in the morning, I said to Josh, I'm really practicing communicating better. And I want to go back to our conversation last night. This is why it was important to me. And I didn't know to tell you that it was important. And he's like, gosh, I had no idea. And had you said that, I would have gone over. He says, I can go over now. But our neighbor leaves early in the morning and is gone most of the day. So it was an opportunity that was missed. I don't know about you. The way I was raised is if I asked something and was told no, there was no negotiation. Again, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that I let my kids really do a lot of negotiating. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. If it was too much, sometimes I felt like they could talk their way around us because we wanted them to have that ability to know that they can challenge authority and that they can ask to have their needs met. I'm still learning it. Where does this come up for you that if somebody says no, that you just kind of go like, okay, and you don't get your needs met? So I think it's important that we talk about things like this and we know that we do have a right to say things. And I could have said, Josh, this is really important to me. And he could have said, I'm not going to do it. That would have been okay. And to know that I can sit with the discomfort if he says no, even if I tell him that it's important, or he has a right to get angry and frustrated with me if he says, Mom, I told you I don't want to do it. That we can manage and tolerate all kinds of feelings and emotions, and we have more authenticity in our relationships and we don't tippy-toe around. Even that day, I had expectations about what I thought Josh would do to help me, and I know he wasn't sleeping well. He got into town after midnight. It took him at least an hour to settle down. This is working a full day, driving an hour and a half to get here, getting up early to go to the beach with the dogs with me, then golfing a full 18 holes, and then coming home and having to get ready for the party. So I get there was a lot going on with him. My expectation was that he would do the setting up for the party because we couldn't do it until Steve and Daniel left. And again, I found myself not communicating. And so who relates to this? It's fine. I'll just do it myself. It's just easier to do it myself. What is that about? And what prevented me from saying, hey, Josh, I know you're tired, but I was counting on having your help, and these are the things I need help with. Did I do that? No. Did I just feel grumbly about it? Yes. Who else relates to that? These are areas where we can work through. And sometimes what we tell ourselves, what I told myself is I didn't want him to get mad at me. I didn't want to have any uncomfortable feelings. It's easier for me to I'll just do it myself. Is that really helpful? Maybe there are times when it is appropriate. I don't know. Then this is switching gears. And what I want to talk about is what do we do when people don't respond to us the way that we expect, and that desire that many of us have to be liked and appreciated by people. So there's someone who came to the party. I'm going to try and just keep this vague, that I've known for a very, 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 very long time. As time went on and our kids grew, we just seemed to grow apart. We're different. I think for me, understanding about the trait of HSP made me recognize that I have a need for get-togethers that are quiet and small and kind of peaceful. And that's not how this person is. This is not a slam. I'm just saying I noticed that we were different. What we were interested in was different. So there was just some space. From my perspective, when I started the podcast, I didn't get any acknowledgement from this person. We're on social media together. I sometimes will give little hearts or likes or something when I see something that they do. No engagement with any of my stuff. When I wrote the book, no acknowledgement. I didn't think too much about it. So this person showed up to the party, said hello, gave hugs. The way our house is set up is our kitchen has a big window in it that looks over onto the patio in the backyard, and that's where everybody was for the party. Once everybody got there, I needed to get the salads together, and so I was in the kitchen by myself for my estimation, an hour, hour and a half, I don't know. My dramatics. I was in the kitchen slaving for 3 hours while everybody partied. That's not true, but I think it was a good hour and a half I was in there. And because I haven't seen this person in so long, I thought for sure they would come inside and chat. Again, I could have gone out and said, "Hey, do you want to come inside and talk with me?" But I just had this unspoken expectation. And it became really clear to me as the night went on that we had very little interaction. They had no interest in spending one-on-one time. I think this is relatable. Oftentimes, if I go to a party or a social event, it's overwhelming. So sometimes it's kind of nice to spend time with the host or the hostess in the kitchen helping get ready. It's a chance to kind of get some personal one-on-one time talking, have a little task so I don't have to deal with socializing. So for me, I often think of those times as kind of intimate times that you have to visit. Somebody else that was very sweet came in with some brie and some pineapple and fed it to me while I was getting the salad ready, asked if I needed any help. And I was really fine doing the prep work. But I did have this expectation that we would be visiting. And the way that the tables were set up is we had a couple of card tables, a larger table that had food and some people sat at it, and another table. So by the time the food was ready, we also ran out of propane halfway during cooking the chicken. So one of our neighbors went home. She couldn't get her propane tank. Another neighbor went back to his house, brought his propane tank, and we were able to finish cooking all the meat. It was fine. That part didn't stress me out. But by the time I was done getting the food ready and brought it out, pretty much all the tables were taken, and there really wasn't a place like with my friends to sit and eat. It was fine, but I felt kind of sad that I just wanted kind of a sense of connection with people. As people shifted around, I did find a place to sit and visited with some people that I cared about. What happened after this person left the party and I was thinking about it, what got activated for me was really my ego, that I wanted to get in there and go like, well, what happened? And is there anything that I did? And it was really about preserving my sense of, am I okay? Was I a good enough friend? And if I do the assessment that we were very, very close at one time, our lives have shifted, our values in many ways are very, very different. The way that we approach relationships and everything is just very different. So again, talk to Jen Perry because that's what I do. And she reminded me that it's okay that relationships grow and change. And I really had to step into that belief of I don't have to be everybody's friend. I don't know if I did something that upset this person or offended this person. I have no idea. And based on what I know about the relationships that this person has, we will probably never have that conversation. Can I be okay with that? Yeah. Am I going to get focused on this one person not being happy to see me and reconnecting? Or can I go, I'm really blessed that I have a handful of people in my life that are incredibly loving and supportive and kind and generous and appreciate who I am. Can I let that be okay? And I have just kind of settled into that and it's been okay. I think it's so important that we talk about this stuff because, of course, we want to be liked. Of course, we want to be the favorite. We want to have those really good connections. And I could see how my ego was driving me to connect so that I felt okay about myself because it activated all the things that I think about myself that maybe I did this, maybe I said that, maybe I didn't do this. And just knowing that I'm okay, I'm enough. I don't have to hustle for relationships. It's okay if people choose to not be with me. It's okay if people don't like me. Really settling into who I am and letting that be okay. And I guess maybe the third thing I can talk about, I talked about some of the frustrations that I was having with Maisie the puppy. And it's interesting that something has shifted with her. She does have some very odd quirks. And I don't know if I talked about this, but I am convinced that somewhere in her lineage in the past couple of generations, I think someone was homeless. I think there's something there because there are some things about her that are very inconsistent. And I think I talked about this already, but if we're at Dog Park, she has that excited, wiggly body. She goes up to people really excited and wiggly, and then they bend down to pet her, and then she runs away. That approach avoid, it's just very interesting. And often with dogs, if dogs come up to her very excitedly, she cowers. But if she can approach a dog, then she has more confidence. She's still a puppy and she's growing. But I had this resistance with her and feeling like she wasn't very affectionate. And I think I told you about the problem with the harness of shame. And it's gotten better. And it's interesting. What I've noticed with the harness is if I can get her into the living room, not with the guise of taking her out, and I put her in a sit and then a stay, then she'll stay for me to put the harness on. She won't leave. Her poor little head ducks down like she's the dog of shame and the worst thing is happening. I'm putting this harness on her so I can take her to the beach or to Dog Park. But she will stay, and I've just learned to try to not fight her so much. And I think letting it be okay to talk about my frustrations, but to not stay focused on the things that weren't working really, really helped. What I think I am going to be doing with her, but I'm not sure if I do, you'll hear more about it. But there's a organization called Fluent Pet. And if you're on TikTok, there's an account called What About Bunny? And they have these buttons that dogs use to communicate. It's fascinating. And these dogs are stringing together words, and not only words like play or outside or scritches, but one of these videos, Bunny talks about ouch, and she ended up having like a burr or a sticker in her paw, and she communicated that to her owner, and then the owner found that there was, something that was stuck in her paw. Also things about time and relationship, soon, now, later, tomorrow. It's fascinating to me, and I think that depending on who you are and what's important, Maisie's very motivated, loves to learn, very engaged. And for me, if there's a way that we can communicate a little bit more, and then also thinking about how I communicate with her and not having very clear words for going in the car, or going to the beach, or going to the park. So I've been more mindful, and it's kind of interesting that the buttons also have love you. And I don't ever really say love you to the dog. So there's a protocol for how you can communicate with your dog even before you get the buttons, because I do need to work on teaching her how to use her foot to press the button. I've taught her how to use her nose to touch my hand wherever my hand is. But UCSD has a study that I joined. So if I do get the buttons, that Maisie and I can be part of the study, and they asked all the words that she knows, but I do need to teach her how to push the button. But love you is one of them. So I'm kind of embarrassed saying this, but so when we're cuddling and having a really nice time together, I go, Mom loves you, Maisie. Mom loves you. And what I've seen a bunch of accounts of dogs that use these Fluent Pet. It doesn't have to be the Fluent Pet, but buttons that talk for the dog. They'll go, love you, Mom, love you, Dad. I don't know. I just find it fascinating. And I think those of you that are sensitive and connected to animals and know that deep bond that you have, to have an ability to communicate with your dog. I remember seeing something where this dog had all of these animals, and dogs can have a vocabulary, a very large vocabulary. And you could ask the dog to get the blue whale, the green fish, and they weren't in sight, and the dog could go get them. So I think the powers of communication are pretty powerful. It's about time to wind down. My hope is that you know that you are okay exactly how you are, that if you're okay with who you are, all your imperfections, all your humanity, that you're enough, you're okay, you've got this. If things are hard, it's okay if things are hard. But who you are is okay, and you don't have to hustle to have your sense of self-worth. My hope is that that's helpful to hear. If you feel like that's BS, that's okay too. I hope you're doing well. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.